Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So as I've told you in previous reviews, there are somewhere in the region of 750 little breweries here in Sweden now. The reason that there's such a high number of these when you consider the population of the country is that the Swedish alcohol laws have been historically very strict. So a lot of people used to homebrew to get around that. A lot of people still do homebrew to get around that in fact. And we're now at a stage where a lot of these home brewers are registering small companies and starting to sell their stuff commercially, so it's great. And because there's so many home brewers, you've got a very high standard of beer, which is also very good. So on that basis, I always make sure that I introduce at least 2 or 3 new Swedish breweries on the channel every month, and it's one of those reviews that we're going to do today. So I'm looking forward to this one, and I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this one then, we are going to go to a little place called Kungälv, which is just to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg on the Swedish west coast, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Aleigen Brewery. So this particular beer is called XXX. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a Belgian style Tripel, which is one of my favourite styles of Belgian traditional beer. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. This beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. And the main reason I got this one was because I didn't have a Tripel this month. I always try to get a variety of different styles when I'm doing my Lokal Småskalig orders, and I also didn't recognise the name of the brewery, and I thought it sounded quite interesting actually. But yeah, certainly looking forward to trying this one. I always enjoy trying new Tripels and things. I've had some really nice examples of this style actually from very small breweries here in Sweden, so fingers crossed this is another example of those, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So yeah, let's get cracking then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Aleigen Brewery. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, and I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing the name right, and hopefully we can add more to that list in the future as well. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography based tagging system, so you can go in there into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Aleigen Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, Aleigen Brewery are based in Kungälv to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded back in 2018 by Robert and Marie Lundblad. So Robert apparently started homebrewing beer back in the 1990s, but he took a bit of a break away from this hobby, but he ended up getting into it again after they moved to Kungälv back in 2009. So they'd been dreaming of starting a brewery together for quite a while, and then they decided to go for it back at Christmas in 2018. So they found a premises in an industrial area in the town, and they set up a small 200-litre brewery and got everything up and running and started producing their beers. A little bit later on, in late 2019, they expanded the premises a little bit and opened up a tasting room, which was quite popular from what I understand. Over the course of 2020, there hasn't been too much activity because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic and things like that, but they seem to still be going strong, and they're starting to release their beers through Systembolaget nationwide and things now. I couldn't find out exactly when they released their first beers through Systembolaget in the local area, but yeah, you can order these things nationwide now. I ordered this one down here to Skåne in the south of the country, so I'm guessing that people in other regions will be able to get a hold of these ones quite easily. But as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 95 different kinds of beer, and that kind of makes sense, to be honest. If they're brewing 200-litre batches and they've got a tasting room and things like that, they will be kind of firing things out quite quickly, and you know, they'll be getting drunk up, I'm sure. But yeah, that was all the information I could really find on this brewery. Hopefully we can add a little bit more to the notes in future videos. We'll just need to see how the brewery progresses. But yeah, that information came from beernews.se, where a lot of the information on these very small Swedish breweries comes from. But yeah, that's it. So if you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and things like that to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. As you can see, it is quite nicely presented. I do like that sort of wooden background that it has. That is pretty cool. It's just a plain white bottle cap on this one, incidentally, but yes, you can see on the side of the bottle here there is the not sure how well that's going to focus, of course, but then there you can see the Aleigen Brewery symbol there. I think I was trying to figure out exactly what this what the name of this brewery was, but I think it is just literally one ale again. I think that's literally what it is supposed to be. I think it's just basically a direct Swedish translation of kind of one ale again, if you like. So yeah, N1 ale beer igen again. But yeah, it says on the side here, XXX is our interpretation of the Belgian Tripel. This beer uses many different types of malt and sugar to give the complexity that we wish. After the yeast is finished, it is dry hopped, and then we give a further yeasting, a further fermentation in the bottle to develop the right level of carbonation, and it contains therefore yeast sediment, if you like. But yeah, interesting. But yeah, we know this. We've had Tripels before, and they've always got a little bit of sediment in them. That's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, there you can see at the bottom there it says Hantverksbryggeriet I Kungälv. So yeah, but yeah, nicely presented this one. I think I paid maybe about 35, maybe 40 Swedish kronas for this one. We'll go with 40 because it's a slightly higher alcohol beer, and that seems a bit more reasonable. So yeah, I think I paid about 40 Swedish kronas for this. So that's roughly about €4. That'll translate roughly to about £3, you know, about £3.50, something like that, and I guess maybe about $5 American, just for those of you watching in different places. But yeah, 8% Belgian style Tripel. This one, it's dry hopped with Hallertau Blanc from Germany, 11% alpha acid hop. It usually gives you some lovely kind of gooseberry flavour. It's actually quite similar to Nelson Sauvin in a lot of its ways, but the green component, of course, is a little bit more noble rather than being very spicy in the way that Nelson Sauvin can be. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting now. I'm just going to be careful with this though, because if you look at it, it's very, very full, and Belgian style beers can be a little bit temperamental. It seems to be okay. Yeah, that's okay. Good. Yeah, I had one from Vreta Klosterbryggeri last month, and that was, I forget what exact style that was, but that thing exploded on me. It basically shooted up. It shot up. Shooted, that's terrible English. It shot up to about the same height as the bottle when I opened it up. It's just, I only managed to salvage a little bit of it actually, which was just crazy. So I'm hoping that, yeah, I'm always careful with these Belgian style beers when you open them up, because you don't want a crazy amount of head from them, and you don't want them exploding on you. It's the one thing I don't like about bottle conditioning. But yeah, there we go. A few little bits of sediment floating in it, but you know, it's not a Tripel if it doesn't have a little bit of sediment there. Yeah, not too much actually on the bottom, come to think of it. But yes, let's sit this down, check that it's in the right position so my OCD is happy, and there we go. So yeah, quite a wee bit of sediment in that actually, but it's all natural, so who cares. So as you can see, we'll look at the head before it disappears. The head on this one is about a half finger. I would say it's a kind of bright white, kind of creamy coloured head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall it does look pretty nice, I have to say. I really like how that goes together. But yeah, you can see this one, in terms of its colour, this is actually a very bright it's a very bright, slightly orangey leaning colour, this one. Some Tripels can be very, very blonde. This one has a good bit of blonde character to it, but I think there's a wee orange kind of ambery tint to it, which is very nice. But definitely in terms of its appearance, there's nothing really untoward about this beer when you consider what style it is. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, as I said, quite a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and it does have a good little bit of a kind of natural haze to it, which is, you know, you don't get that from every Tripel, but you kind of expect it, to be honest, especially from ones that are from the very small breweries like this. But yeah, there's not really much more to say about the appearance of this one, so let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go with it. Very curious. Ooh, that does smell quite nice, actually. So straight away with this beer, you can smell the yeast on it, and you know, with a Belgian style beer, Belgian style beers are all about the yeast, so that's not surprising. So yeah, you get that lovely kind of doughy yeasty thing coming out of this one. You get a little bit of banana, you get a wee bit of that kind of clovey spice in there. You've got a little bit of a kind of bubblegummy note as well, although this one isn't the most kind of candy bubblegummy Tripel that I've come across. Actually, it does come across as more kind of doughy and clovey actually. So I really like how that goes together, and I really like how that goes together in this beer for sure. Yeah, aroma this one is very, very nice, I would say. But yeah, the thing is with these Tripels, a lot of the time what they do to get the alcohol up is they put candy sugar and things in them. So yeah, that's the reason why these Tripel and quadrupel beers are not overly thick, because you would think that, you know, at 8, 9, 10, 11%, these beers would be really thick. That's how the Belgian beers maintain a kind of thinner mouthfeel compared to the other ales, if you like. But yeah, it's putting in a bit of brewing sugar, a bit of candy sugar to take the alcohol up. But yeah, the aroma, this one, I have to say, I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, as I say, quite doughy leaning, good little bit of clovey spice in there. You've got a little bit of that banana sort of note that you would expect. You do get a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element out of this one. There's a wee bit of a kind of sweeter caramel to it, but a good little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing too. There's one or two little woody undertones to it as well, I would say, but yeah, that's kind of to be expected. There's nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of the aroma when you consider what style it is. So yeah, there's nothing madly surprising about this beer, but it certainly comes across as a very nice example of the style. And you know, we've had so many Tripels these days that you can't really ask for much more than that. It's pretty much the same with any style. There's so many breweries out there, you just want a nice example of the style. And you know, what I would look for with it when it comes to Belgian beers and lagers and things like that as well is I would look for authenticity to the original style. You're not really looking for them to do anything kind of mad, to be honest. But yeah, it goes together really nicely. I find that the more you smell of this one, the kind of more the sweetness builds up as well, which is great. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things then, you do get a nice little touch of earthiness out of this one. It's quite German and noble. I mean, regardless of how high in alpha acid you go with these German hops, you always get a bit of noble character out of them, which is great. You get that with Mandarin and Bavaria, Hallertau Blanc, and all the other ones. The German hops have got a very distinct green component to them. But yeah, you've got that lovely smooth earthiness there that you would expect of the noble hops. You can smell that it does develop a little bit of a herbal quality as well, but then you start to get that nice bright floral aromaticity and a good little bit of grassiness on the very front of the nose too. So I definitely like how that side of this beer goes about its business. Absolutely. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice for sure. So the green component really gives you just a little bit of kind of freshness and zestiness and things. When it comes to the fruity side of this beer, you can definitely pick up a little bit of that kind of gooseberry note, of that sort of gooseberry white grapey thing of the Hallertau Blanc. That's a very nice sort of thing with this beer. For me, Tripels, you usually get, you know, there's certain types of fruits and things that you normally get in these, but that sort of gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of thing isn't one, but it actually fits very well with a kind of traditional aroma profile for this style of beer. So Hallertau Blanc is a really interesting choice for dry hopping. And remember, when you dry hop these kind of beers, if you dry hop, that's not really going to affect your bitterness. It's just flavour and aroma that's going to that's going to affect. If you want more bitterness, you need to add them on early on in the wort boil. I'm not sure how long a wort boil a Tripel undergoes, actually, to be honest. Maybe just a standard sort of hour, 90 minutes, something like that. But yeah, I think this one is fairly standard, because remember, the longer you boil the wort in the beer, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you'll get a darker colour. But this one is kind of just fairly in the middle of the road, to be honest with you. But it depends on the type of malts that you're using as well in the first instance. But yeah, on the fruity side of things with this beer, I find this one, there's a wee bit of apricot in there. You've definitely got a bit of a kind of perry and apple ester as well, all of these things you expect, but you've got that kind of gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of thing, which is nice. It's a very dried fruit aroma, yeah, pears, apples, a bit of apricot, and then the kind of gooseberry sort of thing. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in terms of the aroma. So take a bit of time and enjoy that, but I think it's about time that we get stuck into this one then. So this one is the XXX, an 8% Tripel, dry hopped with Hallertau Blanc from Aleigen Brewery in Kungälv to the north of Gothenburg. So let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That is quite nice, actually. Very clean tasting Tripel, but it definitely just on first impressions, it really leans to that big sort of punchy, yeasty kind of element to it. I quite like this one. It's very clean, but at the same time, it's one of these ones where the flavour kind of creeps out of it gradually. You can feel that it's going to be like that. And it actually feels a little bit boozier. Just on first impression, it feels a little bit boozier than 8%. I think, you know, the Tripel usually is between 8 and sort of 9%. I think I've had ones that are a bit higher than that as well. But yeah, it certainly works, this beer. It is quite nicely done. It does actually taste, the yeastiness in this beer does actually taste fairly familiar. So I wonder, with their yeast strain that they're using in this, I'm wondering if they've like nicked a little bit off the bottom of like Westmalle or something like this. I'm wondering if they, or Westmalle or La Trappe or something like that. I'm wondering if they've like nicked a little bit of the yeast from the sediment in one of these bottles, because it does actually taste very, there's something about this beer that's very familiar in the yeasty component to it. And obviously, you know, when you've got separate yeast strains, you're feeding them differently, so they will develop. So there is something familiar about this beer, but it has its own slight uniqueness to it as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if the yeast that they're using in this is derived, if it's their own culture that's derived from a wee swab taken from one of the bottom of the Belgian, one of the famous Belgian Tripel bottles, should we say. But yeah, this is it's a nice example of the Tripel, actually, and you can't fault them for doing that. You know, it's a very good way to get your yeast, of course, and to get an authentic Tripel, because these Belgian styles are pretty hard. They're pretty hard to get with, you know, bought-in yeasts and things like that. A lot of the breweries that brew these beers as their bread and butter have the yeast strains that have been developed over generations and things. So yeah, it's a good move to make if that's what they've done. But yeah, like I say, this is a very clean Tripel, and it takes a bit of time for the flavour to kind of creep out of it. But what you get out of this one is not, it's very, very close actually to what you would expect from the aroma. So let's break that down and describe it properly. So straight away with this beer then, you can feel a sort of pale malty quality. That kind of blankets, it's a very light pale malty quality, that blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of that though, you get a lovely kind of big, thick, yeasty component pushing its way out of the beer. So yeah, I can really appreciate how that goes together in this one, definitely. And as I say, it takes, the yeastiness kind of starts at the back of the palate, and over the course of drinking this beer you can feel it just sort of creeps forward and gradually reveals more of itself. So that's an interesting side to this beer. But yeah, on top of that kind of crisp malty, that sort of crisp pale white bready malty thing, the yeast, you can feel the yeast or the back of the palate just pushing its way forward. So on that middle third of your palate, if you go towards that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel that's almost where the concentration of the yeast is kind of coming from. You can feel that there's a really thick yeasty component to the beer there, and it's just got a wee touch of a graininess and bitterness there in that border region. But as you go further back from that, you can feel there is a bit of the kind of bitey element to the yeast, and that forms the basis of the beer. But as you move further forward from that, it's got a nice kind of yeasty, it's really got a nice kind of yeasty, just doughy thing there, and it's quite a concentrated, almost slightly boozy element that you get out of that, but you can just feel the thickness of the yeast gradually creeping forward on that middle third of your tongue. So it kind of goes to about the halfway point in the mouth, and then it feels a little bit lighter and airy, but you can still get a bit of the yeast on that front half of the middle third of your tongue. So it's quite interesting, this one. It's definitely a more, it's strange to say, but it's definitely a more yeasty leaning Tripel. Quite a few of them have a little bit of caramel and have a little bit of biscuit and things like that. This one really does lean mostly towards that yeasty side of things. But yeah, I can appreciate that about this beer for sure. Yeah, it is really nicely done in that sense. But yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say about the middle third of your palate. There are one or two little woody undertones to it, which can develop a little bit later on. And this beer, as I say, it's not one of the overly sugary, it's not one of the overly kind of brown sugary Tripels that you're going to come across. In the very centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of caramelly honey sort of thing, and that's partly the alcohol coming out in this one as well. But as you move further out towards the edges of the palate there, from that centre of your palate, it does get a little bit more kind of biscuity. There is a wee touch of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing there, but it's almost a little bit honey-like as well. Maybe honey is a better descriptor for this one actually than McVitie's digestive biscuits. But yeah, it's a straight shooter, this one. It really is a straight shooter. The concentration of the yeasty component, like I say, in that border region between middle third and back third of your palate. On the back third of your palate, you kind of course feel that the yeast is a little bit more kind of airy, if you like, so the yeasty flavour is a little bit taller there. So if you start at the back of the palate, the height of the flavour, if you like, is like this, and then as you move into the middle third of your palate, it kind of condenses down a little bit, and then it just feels a little bit sort of thicker and more condensed in that middle third of your tongue. So I really like how that side of things goes together in this beer. So yeah, I really like how that side of things goes together in this beer for sure. It works very, very nicely. So yeah, middle of your palate in this one is pretty solid. Nice. It's got a good yeasty component to it. It's got a good little bit of breadiness, and as I say, on that front half of that middle third of your tongue, it does develop a bit more of a breadiness. Then you've just got a wee bit of a boozy, alcohol-y, slightly caramelly and honey and biscuity sort of thing in the middle of your palate there too. So all things that you would expect from the Tripel, but definitely a more bready leaning Tripel. This one, it does become more bready the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one, and it's a typical soft kind of German noble earthiness. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal character, and then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a good little bit of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing going on, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, I really like that about this too. So yeah, nice bit of a floral aromatic-y spice sort of thing on the front kind of corners of the palate. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassier as well. The grassiness does have a wee touch of zestiness to it in this beer as well, I would say. So I can certainly appreciate that too. I can certainly appreciate that about this beer. The green component is very nice, but it is very German noble-like. As I said, you've got Hallertau Blanc in there, so that's not such a big surprise. But yeah, on to the fruity side of things then. So as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, Again, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of yeasty concentration there, and there's a bit of graininess. But then the base of that front third of your palate is the base of that kind of front third of your palate is a kind of soft white bready kind of thing, which is nice. So yeah, I like that about I certainly like that about this. Yeah, about this beer. It's just got the breadiness, I think, comes out of this one the further you go into it. But on top of that kind of bready base, you've got a lovely, just kind of oily flavour coming out of the beer. So if you go towards the back of that, front third of the palate, you've got a very nice, slightly more concentrated citrusy element. So yeah, a nice kind of yeasty element coming out of the beer for sure. So yeah, you get a nice kind of just yeasty, that you get a nice little bit of a kind of more concentrated citrus at the back, but then it develops a sort of, it does develop a kind of more apricot-y flavour in there. There's maybe a wee bit of a peachy sharpness as well, come to think of. So I get a little touch of peach in this one, but then it's a soft apricot-y note, and as you move further forward, you gradually get more peary and apple-y esters, but on the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about those gooseberry kind of green white grapey things from the Hallertau Blanc. It gets distinctly more oily, and then you get a wee bit more of a kind of lemon limey citrus just behind the very front tip of the tongue where the grassy elements come out. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how all of that goes together in this beer for sure. It's kind of got everything you'd expect, but it is quite a yeasty leaning Tripel, if that makes sense, and it does develop more of a breadiness the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes together for sure. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me, this one. I've enjoyed this Tripel. It's quite different compared to the other ones I've had in recent times actually. It has got a little bit more, the yeastiness feels a little bit more kind of raw in a sense, but the overall feel of the beer is quite clean. But you kind of get that with Nordic beers, they always feel quite clean and things like this. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off the review, I would say that this beer, it's kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied, something like that. Carbonation does have a fair wee bit of activity, but again, you'd expect this from a Tripel, especially when it's a bottle fermented one, so absolutely. The mouthfeel overall though, it's got a kind of slickness and kind of cleanliness to it, which I can really appreciate. But on the hoppy bitter side of things, I think this is a fairly standard, 20, 25 IBU, probably less than that to be honest. Remember, IBUs are my weakest point of beer reviewing, so I think maybe about a 20 IBU beer. The malty base is quite smooth and quite crisp. You develop a little bit of sweetness out of this one, and the yeastiness kind of thickens it out, but on the fruity side of things, it does go together really nicely. It's got a nice kind of oily and slightly juicy and zesty fruity character. It develops a little bit of zestiness the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, this is a nice example of the Tripel. I've enjoyed reviewing this one, and it is a little bit, the yeastiness is a little bit more authentic in this one, I think, compared to some of the other ones that I've had in recent times. This beer just feels a little bit more raw, and I think that's why it kind of strikes me. It's definitely got that raw small batch brewed thing going on about it, so that's always a good thing. I like that about reviewing these kind of these beers from the very small breweries. So yeah, thumbs up to Aleigen Brewery. I'd love to see a quadrupel from these guys at some stage. That would be interesting. So I need to see, they probably have done one, but I don't know if it's through Systembolaget, so I need to look at that. But I'd love to try a quadrupel from these guys at some point, so we'll see about reviewing that at some stage in the future. But yeah, this was really nice. This one at the XXX Belgian Tripel, 8% ABV from Aleigen Brewery in Kungälv to the north of Gothenburg, near the Swedish west coast. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Aleigen Brewery, and I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point fairly soon. But in the meantime, slange it, skål, cheers, and I'll catch you guys in the next review.